Welcome to the Grand Collaborations, a part of the Grand Podcast. My name is Niels Tuller Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grand. The Grand is now open for business, and I have therefore created the podcast category, The Grand Collaborations, where I will launch podcast collaborations with partners. This podcast episode is a collaboration between the RM Framework project, funded by Horizon Europe, and The Grand. Research management is a job title that keeps getting more and more solid ground under its feet. From a role with little or no recognition to now being acknowledged by most countries in the EU as a vital role in research organizations. One of the reasons why the research management role has reached this point is because of a dedicated community around Europe that has insisted on shaping the role and demanding that it is taken seriously in the research community. Part of this big job has been done through EU-funded projects that have given the community the opportunity to define, shape, build, and connect through the projects like Formation and RM Roadmap. The RM Framework project is a natural continuation of this, further consolidating the role. With EU funds supporting the consortium development of a European qualification system for research management by standardizing educational and training programs and elaborating a quality label to enhance interoperability and improve the RM profession within the European research area. The Grant and RM Framework will over 15 episodes dig into the different parts of the project and follow the development over the next 1.5 years. Here in this third episode, it is time to have a look at the ecosystem of research management. I am joined by project partners Frank Ziegele from CHE Higher Education Management and Policy and Henning Rickelt from Center for Science and Research Management to unfold for us all the ecosystem of research management, the complexity of it at European and national level, and how it influences the efforts to develop a standardized training system for research management. Great content. Please enjoy. Welcome to the Grant, the EU funding podcast. This is part of my collaboration series together with the EU Horizon Europe project, RM Framework project. It's a research management corner, and it's a further step in consolidating the research management area as a position, as a field, and supporting the group of people working within that field. So Henning, Frank, welcome.
Yes, hello. Hi, Niels.
Hello, Niels, and hello to all the listeners.
And before we share what we're going to talk about today, can I get you to briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can start. So my name is Frank Ziegele. I'm German. I'm the executive director of an institution called CHE, Center for Higher Education, which is a private non-profit think tank for higher education. And I'm also a professor for higher education management at the University of Applied Sciences in Osnabrück. And my institution, CHE, is one of the partners in this wonderful RM framework project.
Yeah, thanks. Henning.
Okay, yes, I'm Henning Rickelt. I'm also German. I also represent a non-profit stakeholder organization in the field of science and research management. My organization is called Zentrum für Wissenschaftsmanagement, so Center for Science and Research Management. We have training, consulting, networking solutions, and we provide them to the ecosystem, to first use this word. And I'm very happy to be here. And I'm also a partner, or my organization is also a partner in that RM Framework project. And we work closely together, Frank and myself, not only in this project, but especially in this project in one of the work packages.
Yeah. And if we just give the listeners zoom a little bit out, we will have 15 episodes, podcast episodes in this series, and we're still in the early phase of that series. So we've had a nice introduction episode with Nick Claesen from Yama. the coordinator. And last episode was with Anna, that shared with us on, it's a difficult surname, Royon Weigel, I think she's called. She shared about state of the art on trainings within research management. A very nice episode that we released 6 weeks ago in the beginning of October. We have sort of reached now to the ecosystem. What is research management? What does the ecosystem consist of? And if we should have a short sort of fly into this topic that we're going to talk about today, can you sort of encapsulate that in a few lines?
Yeah, well, maybe I can start. So an ecosystem is, well, everything around research management. So all the framework conditions, all the things that determine how research management should be done, what research management contains. Yeah, that is, you cannot just, if you already said in the beginning, yeah, in the end, we are going for recommendations or a handbook or something for training providers. Yeah, a training provider cannot just sit there and say, hey, I think about research management, I do something. She or he should think about what are the factors that determine research management, determine the markets, yeah, the job structures, determine also the training market, what happens across Europe. It could be rules and regulations that are relevant for research managers. It could be the labor market. Yeah, you cannot design a research management training if you don't know anything about the labor market that is out there. So it's all that framework where, well, in an ecosystem, plants are growing. So if we see a research management training as a small plant becoming bigger and having a lot of fruit, yeah, then we have to know what is the ecosystem around it. Maybe that's as a first fly in.
Henning, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, just to put it in a nutshell, I would say it's everything that explains and describes research management as it is today. And there are a couple of dimensions to it, as Frank already mentioned it. There's a history in it. There's a political dimension. There are actors like the research managers, like the organizations. There are structures. There is policy. There are trainings. There are mobility schemes, and so on and so on. So it's everything that makes up research management today. And as it grew to come to the situation as it is today, the involvement is important, I think.
Which already indicates that this is quite complex. Yeah, an ecosystem is not a simple thing. It consists out of many components, and it has certain. Yeah, we're also talking about. We can talk about a national ecosystem, a European ecosystem. So there are also different levels for that.
Yes, let's just get right at it. Thanks. So it's bridging us into, of course, the first block here on the topic. So what do we mean by the research management ecosystem? So definition.
Well, the definition I think we had, I think it's very simply what explains research management today, all the influential explanatory factors we just mentioned. And if you're allowed to go into some of it, there is, as I said before, first of all, the involvement of research management, which is quite recent. Maybe that started somehow after the Second World War, when research became more complex, when it got more international, when it got more cooperative, which required functions that exceeded the mere, say, administrative work that was used up to that time. So research management is always linked, of course, to research. It is a management function linked to research. And if research evolves itself, then research management is affected as well, of course. we have also political influences to it. On the national level, where research management was more or less in Europe recognized as a profession, an own profession, this is one of the important things on the European level, of course, because this evolvement and this shift to a recognized professional status is quite uneven across the European regions. On the European level, we have, of course, the ERA policy agendas. Now, the second agenda, which is trying to thrive research management, we have the projects. The third project right now funded by Horizon Europe. We had the roadmap project, we had CADEA, we have framework right now. So these are just two dimensions which contribute heavily to what is happening in the research management ecosystem right now. But there are, of course, more factors to it, like people, like organizations, and so on. I don't know, Frank, would you like to jump in, or I can just add some more points to that if you want?
Yeah, maybe on a different level, because you just said people and organizations. Yeah, so system happens on very different levels. Yeah, Henning created the big picture of European contexts. Well, maybe a very specific example that comes to my mind. One function of research managers could be what is often called a pre-grant management. So that means helping researchers to draft a research proposal. Yeah, that is one of the tasks that are relevant if you run research. Yeah, you should be good and professional in drafting that. And now, if we look around in Europe and we look at the culture in different countries, in different regions of Europe, we could find one region where everyone thinks writing the proposal, this is the task for the researcher. Yeah. So why do we need research managers? Yeah, the researcher should be professional. So we go into proposal writing trainings for all the researchers. And then there might be another ecosystem in another country. And I would say, for instance, in Germany, we are closer to another culture or context where people would say, hey, why should all these researchers know everything about funding programs and about what is expected in a proposal? Let's create a research management function. Let's establish a service culture in higher education administration or in research administration. And with the service culture, we establish a position of a person who helps the researchers to write the proposal. And that's the moment when we are into research management. Yeah. And so that is the recognition that Henning was talking about. You might find one place where this is not recognized, that this makes sense, because people say, why do we need all these administrative positions? Yeah, we need many researchers. But in another cultural context, this is acknowledged that this is a good idea. So that is part of the ecosystem. Yeah, how do leaders behave? Is there a culture for a service-oriented administration in a research performing organization? And that is as important as the big picture about European rules and regulations. And so again, this is an argument. Ecosystem is a very complex thing with different layers.
And which also shows, if I may, that the ecosystem, research management ecosystem in Europe is very diverse. This is what you just explained, Frank. And if I remember, one of the first exercises, Frank, when we started in ERA Action 17, was we tried to define what is research management. We undertook this exercise and we failed, actually, because it was not we were not able to find this very one exact definition of what is a research manager, beginning with the name itself. Is it research management? Is it research support? Is it research administration? What is it? Yeah, and so we came up with a solution saying we argue for an inclusive and flexible approach coming from the roles, coming from the job profiles research managers take over in the different countries and regions and settings and surroundings. So it's fuzzy and it's colorful, a colorful ecosystem.
say that the fact that the European Commission's has raised the stakes of funding continuously since the 80s has sort of been a motor, a push factor for universities that would never think of this in the 70s or 80s or 90s. But suddenly there's so much going on that you need an intermediator, so to say. That's what I often land on when I talk to research managers. What are you? You are the person in between the outside world, the funding administrators, and the research teams. And there are many layers in that role, but basically it's a role that's sort of translating both ways.
But Niels, I think it's an interesting thing that you talk about the motors or the engine of these of the development of this ecosystem. So I think you're right with the one you mentioned. It's the complexity of funding sources or the ecosystem of funding sources. It is also another thing is that if you run a research project today, there is a greater diversity of skills that are expected from you. Because you, of course, still you have to be an excellent researcher, but you also have to be a communicator to the public, for instance. And as we all know, not every researcher is able to do that. So you might need someone to help you with that competence that you don't have. And there another motor maybe is the complexity of the projects in terms of international collaboration. I think that is also something that is completely different from what we had 20 years ago. And again, that is also part of the ecosystem. We are not working isolated as a research performing institution or university, but we are working in various networks. And that needs then, or that creates the need, if we come back to trainings, the skills that you have to be trained in. So the manager needs the skill to organize a network and to run a network and to bring partners together and to keep the network alive. So that's a skill that comes on top of the methodological skill that a researcher needs in her or his discipline.
And they have to jump into more and more, say, cross-cutting issues that have in the beginning not much to do with research. Think about gender issues, think about data management issues, think about I don't know, things like this. So you have to have, as a research manager, much more knowledge and much more competencies today than you used to need. I would suggest, or I would suppose, in 20 years ago or 25 years ago. So the competence spectrum has become much more big and varied for the research managers.
The system, the way the funding system has developed, what we can conclude, right? The way the funding system has developed and the demands from the Commission or from the work programs, what you put in there of factors you need to be answering to. Indeed, you need someone, a translator, in between the research teams and the individual PI and the funding system itself.
The Commission came up, maybe not recently, but it came up with the idea that now it's about knowledge valorization. And so a new term has been created, and now everyone thinking about, okay, what does that mean? What's the difference to the knowledge transfer that we did so far? What is and now that is a typical change in the ecosystem. And now you need the people who have the knowledge to say, okay, this is what we have to do if we want to go for knowledge valorization. And so there are many examples of that kind. And it's not only European, of course. The same thing is with the national funding sources. In our country, in Germany, we have quite a lot of interesting funding sources because we are a federal country, even on the federal level and on the state level. So then you have Europe, federal government, state government, and you have to navigate through that ecosystem of funding, and that's not an easy task.
There's always something to translate. Why when it was FP7, it was impact. What does impact actually?
Yeah.
Some are still struggling with that.
Yeah.
Nah. On that note, let's move into the next block, and that's exactly kind of what we're bridging into here: the added value of research management. So, just if we have listeners out there, now we sort of painted the map right here, right? So, what is it? What do they do? Now we sort of given hints with the conversation here, but already. But why does research management matters for institutions research? What is it?
Yes. I think the first thing, maybe, which is the most important one, is that the impact of research management appears on two levels. The impact could be seen on the institutional level. Yeah, so the research performing institution has a benefit from research management because they get the funding, the research has an outcome. Yeah, so the research works, you have successful research. The research managers are facilitators that help to do that. Yeah, we and maybe mentioning the second level first. The second level, of course, is the societal impact. Yeah, so it's not only on the institutional level, but we hope and we are sure that research management is also doing something for society. It is shaping the way in which science and research is done. Yeah, so research management could help to create, for instance, more open science, or to perform your research in a more sustainable way. Yeah, so respecting the sustainability objective, or more responsive to society, or whatever. So there could be societal benefits. And what is a really great thing, I would recommend everyone to take a look at that. You can find it on the internet. The European Commission has collected success stories for research management, and there is a document with 70 success stories, and they are really on these two levels. Yeah, so it's the success story of, for instance, of a research institute in Spain which had a lack of funding, and the researchers were overwhelmed, and then they created research managers, and they increased their Horizon Europe funding from 6 million euros to 17. Yeah, so that's an institutional impact. Or you have other examples. There was an alliance of universities engaging in knowledge valorizations, and the research managers organized pitching events of researchers with venture capitalists. And we all know that one of the problems we have, or I should say challenges. In German, we always say problems, but I have to say these are these are challenges. Yeah, so one of our challenges is we have so much basic research, we have interesting innovations, but we have problems compared to the US or other countries to bring our innovations to the market. And one thing we are missing is in venture capitalists and investors. Yeah, and so this alliance of universities created a system to bring together venture capitalists with their researchers. And that's a fantastic contribution. And they have a couple of spin-off companies that now have been established and are running and are earning money. So that is a proof of the concept that there is really an outcome. So these are so that has an institutional and a societal impact, because it makes Europe stronger in terms of innovation. But research managers still have to struggle to show that impact. Yeah, because it's not always so. I think these examples have been quite clear, but it's not always easy to say, if you have one more research manager, your turnout in terms of additional income or whatever and of societal impact is this or that. Yeah, so that's really something, and we are back to the ecosystem. This is a topic for the ecosystem also to create an environment where impact becomes transparent and measurable, and that is also an important aspect.
And one of the challenges, not the problems, one of the challenges, if I may, is that all these nice contributions made by research managers are not very much seen and not recognized and not acknowledged in our scientific world. I remember when we had this leadership workshop in June this year, actual leaders very rarely came to the workshop, and it's not so easy to make them aware of the added value of research management. Very often we have this picture in our world that research managers, they're doing mere support work, or the added value cannot be measured, or some of these activities they perform, they should be performed by researchers themselves, and so on and so on. So one of the main goals we have in our project, and also in all the work that is done in ERA Action and so on, is just to recognize what research managers do and make it acknowledged. And that is why these actions and these projects are so important as well. We all know about it. We come from out of the scene, but it is not seen out there. And it's not seen out there even by the leaders of their own organizations where these people work.
This is probably the biggest problem as a research manager. I've been having a lot of research managers through this podcast, and one of the square root, you cannot have several square roots, but but one of the key issues that they always said, this is about management and attitude from management. On this, the importance of management understanding the role and what it does to the organization, why it is important to have that. So it can make or break any research manager. If a manager doesn't understand this, if it has been inherited from another manager, the role, and then, it not really might be a new leader from the research side who doesn't see why on earth do we need this. It's just a waste of, it's bureaucracy, red tape. That's a lot of struggle there. So that's this thing of a perception of the role. It's everybody I talk to is both from the management but also from research teams. So if you have old conservative or just researchers with a certain perception of what is important in this world, and researchers are fantastic, I always say, but many of them are also very dedicated to what they do, and if they see something that they don't think is important, they would throw it to the bin right away. And these research managers, they have to deal with a lot of these kind of attitudes. Also people who understands very well and see the added value role, but they are juggling with such a variety of how people view them. That is so they constantly struggle with showing the added value of what they do to somebody.
To take the example of funding schemes, be it on national level, be it on EU level, I don't hardly know any funding programs allocating resources to the aspect of research management. It's all about research. It's about some cross-cutting issues, as mentioned before. Gender issues are always important. Data management is important. Research integrity is important. Research ethics is important. But how about research management? What about these people who do this job, who run all these projects, who run all this work, pre-award, post-award, and so on? And I don't know many funding schemes allocating resources for research management. This shows, the acknowledgement or non-acknowledgement of this task.
No.
Sometimes it's also a matter of not only of recognition, but also of, I would say, affordability. If you, for instance, compare a large research institution with a very small university. So for the small ones, it's a very tricky task to establish these kind of functions because they just don't have the resources. And so what we really, if I would look at a German or a Dutch or so large research university, I don't think we have an issue of recognition there.
Yeah.
I think that's these are institutions where it's clear that we need these guys and they have their role. Of course, they still have to demonstrate their impact all the time. Yeah, that remains. But again, it depends on the ecosystem you live in. If you are a small German university of applied sciences, it might be much more difficult.
Yeah, then age come into the game, right? Because if you are, for instance, I just reached an episode from a Slovak research organization on research management. There, because of lack of resources, you hire juniors, and then you have both age, inexperience, and perception of what you're doing from experienced researchers. We need to move on, but I think we covered it quite well, right? It should sort of have painted the picture of the added value. Now, the next block we have here, that's inputs that shape the project. So now this project series is about the RM framework project. Yeah. Now we've been talking a lot about what is research management, what is the ecosystem, what is the role, added value, and so on. Now, just a little bit, I think we put in this block to sort of what are you building your project on? What has shaped why you are doing this? So key frameworks and resources feeding into it.
So if I may start, I think one of the main issues of our project is, of course, creating a teaching approach and writing that down in a training handbook. This is what is being talked about in the next episode, I think, of the podcast. But this is really, I would say, at the center of the whole project, besides the quality label, maybe, of course, which is coming up also. And so if we talk about training and building up a training guideline or a training approach, we have to look at those aspects which are important for learning processes for research managers, of course. So the first thing that comes to my mind is we have to talk about job profiles, we have to talk about roles, and we have to talk about competencies which are needed to perform these tasks and to perform these roles. And we have seen this year another big result of our ERA action and of the projects before, which is a competence framework, RMcomp, Research Management Competence Framework, which has been adopted formally by the European Commission, which is very important. And we see a structured collection of competencies research managers need for their different tasks. The RMcomp is made up of competence areas, of single competencies in these areas of learning outcomes. So you see already how this is going to be used in training. It is clustered by proficiency levels, somehow the same levels as we have for the researchers. We have R1 to R4 levels. And in the RMcomp, we have RM1 to RM4 proficiency levels, starting from the first stage research managers, intermediate, advanced expert managers, and so on. And of course, all these different people need different competencies or more and more intensive competencies in the various sectors. This is, I think, one of the most important inputs we have for our project, because competencies are at the core of training and development and learning. But of course, there are other things like, say, experiences from existing trainings. There are regulations. There are frameworks on, say, data protection. There is a European code for research integrity, something like that, which is an input. And last but not least, I think there are also insights from say, learning and teaching in general, for example, from instructional design. How do I set up a training program in general, and how can I do it for research managers, especially? This is at the core of the project, and whatever feeds into this exercise and into this task is an important input for us.
I think it's, of course, an important accomplishment for the the field of research management, that you now have a compass. Yeah. you now have a competition. So the competences, you can go in and see what competences would I need. You have some sort of guidance for research managers. If you are new, if you are trying to establish the role, you get some experience-based guidance, because that's what it is, right? It's standing on the shoulders of EU-funded projects that has been trying to map the role and to sort of put some, what is this role actually about, and drawing on that, you have built up this sort of guidelines. So that's of course important. But maybe we would directly into the RM framework, so the project, and how you are building on all this, because that's what is really important in this conversation, right? So tell me, how are you using all this? What kind of so this is a lot of there's a lot of balls in the air here, right? Can you take us in the hand here, dear listener?
Yes. Yeah, so the purpose in the end is to establish, we could call it a qualification framework. So that is a framework that helps training providers to design research management trainings that help research managers to get the qualifications they need. Yeah, and this is, we always talk about a handbook. So we are trying to produce a handbook that will guarantee that, and maybe it is important to understand what we mean by that. Is that, well, there is a kind of vision behind it, and the vision behind it is there should be an interoperable European market for trainings in research management. Yeah. So in the last episode of that podcast, you talked with Anna about the trainings that are already out there. Yeah. So there are a lot of things going on in many countries, and there are some good examples, but this is fragmented. Yeah. These are bits and pieces that we have. And what we intend to do is to create a coherent system out of these bits and pieces. And the link, and that's why Henning stressed that this RMcomp, this competence framework, is such an important basis. The link that brings everything together is the idea of competences. Yeah, so there is a set of competences. There are jobs. In these jobs, you need certain competences. There is a training. The training provides the development of certain competences. And there is a person who wants to qualify for a job, and she or he exactly needs the competences that she or he is missing to fulfill the job that she or he was hired for. Yeah, and our framework should help to do that. Yeah, so maybe to mention one aspect that is, of course, contributing to create that framework. We all know the famous European Bologna system. Yeah, the Bologna system for bachelor and master studies, where we have modules of learning and where we have credits. Yeah, so that is the currency which makes modules from different places interoperable. We should and could use that system, of course, also for the research management trainings. Yeah, if also in the research management trainings you get credits for what you are doing, you have a clear description of the competence that you get. There is a clear description, a job description of the competence you need, and you acquired these number of credits with the competence. Yeah, so then in the end everything fits together. You might see that this is ambitious. Yeah, so this is not a simple thing to create that, but what we really want is this transparent market that is encouraged and guaranteed by a framework which guarantees this interoperability of all these systems. And in the end, you could also imagine there is a kind of European platform where these trainings are registered, and then you could go there and you find a training from Spain and one from Germany and one from Finland, and it might be online trainings, then you put them together to a qualification that you need for your job. Yeah, so this is creating a platform is not part of this project, but it could be part of a future vision coming out of that. And with the handbook, we want to create, and that is a topic for one of the next podcasts. How this handbook really looks like. But this handbook should be made to help the provider of a training to develop a training which is taking into account this vision of a European market.
I think what is important to note, Frank, also is that for reasons of all the complexity we just discussed before, of all these different job profiles and tasks and levels and so on, the training approach, or say the handbook, won't provide a single curriculum for how to teach research managers. It's more a process guide, a process guide, how to establish a good learning program, how to establish a good training for and now different people within the research management scene, according to the exact job profile they have, according to the proficiency level they are in, RM1 to RM4 and so on, according to the competencies they really need, according to the career development plan that their own organization might have, and so on and so on and so on. So it's rather a process guide of how to take all these aspects into account, and then out of that create a good practice training. Yeah.
And the reason, I think that's a good point, Henning. And the reason for that complexity, of course, again, is also the complexity of these job profiles. A research manager could be a developer of a research strategy. A research manager could be a data manager, who is dealing with research data. It could be a marketing expert. It could be an infrastructure expert. So research managers are also running large research infrastructures. But what we currently are doing, so the handbook is not finished yet. So it's really it's an ongoing process. But what we, for instance, are doing, I just mentioned to you these very different jobs, or a science communicator or whatever. What we try to identify is, are there competences which are relevant for all the jobs? Because you might have very specific ones. If you run research infrastructures, I'm totally sure you need some very specific things. But there could be also cross-cutting things which we can find in every area. Then that could be something for a kind of basic training in research management, and then there could be more specialized training. And there could be small trainings and larger trainings. There could be a training on conflict management for research trainers, which might be something for everyone. But it could be a training for data stewardship, where we have very specific competences in terms of data analysis.
I think it's very. This is going to be if this really happens, so to say. If you manage to start a development where you will have vocational training schools offering these kind of because that would probably in that part of the system you would have it start to offer sort of stamped, labeled to that there's a common standard that you always know if you take it in Slovakia, in Spain, in Finland, in Germany, whatever, that there are some criteria, there's some things you need to come through in the curricula. Then you are far if that comes to that. And it's not only the ones that you educate, it's also the one you hire. So for managers, such a handbook is vital, because they can finally have a place, perhaps they have a resource where they can have tick boxes. What is this role? So what kind of competences do we need when we hire people in? Because it's a totally Pandora's box now, right? it can be everything and nothing, right? It basically is what we also been discussing throughout this episode. So I think it will serve many purposes if it really manages to take that, move into that kind of impact at the real.
But we are definitely not starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So this is more putting loose ends together and forming something that is coherent. I think that's the good thing about it.
Yeah. I think we can move on to reflections because it's. I think we covered it quite well.
Yeah, maybe we can to create some attention for the next podcast. we can save more details about the handbook for that one. So you should also listen to that one.
Maybe before we move on to the next podcast already, what I would like to mention is how important I feel it is that we have these initiatives and these projects on the European level, partly formally adopted by the EU Commission. For example, this RMcomp competence framework has been adopted in a way formally by the European Commission. And I think this is very important because the Commission, of course, is the most important authority in Europe. And when they adopt results from our work formally, these things are very likely to be integrated in policy, in legislation, in new funding schemes. So this will affect all the ecosystem of research management in Europe. And this is why I think the European level is the right level to do that. In order to do this synthetic work we are just doing at the moment. So this is why I like to work in all this environment also. It's really
the Commission started it with all their funding and everything.
Yeah.
Maybe adding one small point is that where sometimes people are also talking critically about harmonization and too much standardization from the European level, but I think that's not what we are doing here. So of course, there is still a lot of discretion for training providers to go their way, but we want to produce or we want to stimulate a certain way of thinking about it. That's why Henning was also saying the handbook is creating and recommendations for processes, how to develop your training, but it is not saying this is exactly how the training should look like. So it's not about standardized trainings across Europe. Of course, they should adapt to the local situations, and I think that's also an important point. So we want to give a guide of a kind of joint system, how to customize your training to the respective needs. But we don't want to say this is the standard and everyone has to do that.
Nice reflections here in the end on, because that is exactly what this is. But it's, you know what it also is? It's a matter of generating some critical mass. Generating some materials around this, because then there will come. I already had a podcast episode with a research manager that said, but there are some things in this competence framework that it's difficult to understand, or it's written in bureaucratic language. So it's and then you have that, but at least you have something, a wall you can play up against. As like in the continued development of these things, to make sure that it's for the best for everybody.
And it's part of the professionalization of research management that is on its way to become a real profession and to become acknowledged as a real profession. This is what makes it important, and this is what makes it interesting and fantastic, I think.
The word that I dotted down at the beginning of the episode, professionalizing. So thanks for being psychic about that. Now, thanks. This has been very nice. So, of course, next episode will be about the handbook. Now, I've been paddling around the handbook for 3 episodes. Don't talk too much about the handbook. There will be an episode of the handbook. So yeah, there will be. The next episode is going to be dedicated to that. So releasing the tension. What is it? How far are you with it, you guys?
With the handbook?
Do you know? Yes. Yeah.
we are in the middle, and
Okay.
and what still is about to come. I think that's an important part of the project. It's a pilot testing.
Mhm.
Yeah, so because we can sit behind our desks and write nice
Mhm.
handbooks, but they then there needs to be a proof of the concept in practice. So part of the project is also that there is a group of so-called pilot
Yeah.
testers who will give us recommendations how to work with the handbook and what to do with it. And these are things coming up in the next weeks and months, and we are really looking forward to that. Yeah. So with this ecosystem, we created a starting point. We are now in the middle of working on a draft of main parts of the handbook, and then we will go into the pilot testing, into refinement, and we will tell more about
Yeah.
that later on.
Yeah, and I can share with the listeners that, of course, there will be episodes on the pilot. So we will have dedicated episodes to some of these pilots. So you can look forward to that. We also I'm discussing with the dissemination communication responsible organization contacts about other tricks and things we will do in this podcast to share a little bit what's going on in the project as we move on. So you can look forward to that. It's nice to have some 15 episode playing ground to play on when you're a podcast developer like myself. And it's so nice to have all these knowledgeable people into the studio. Thank you so much. Do you have any famous last words before we say goodbye to the listeners?
Henning, that's for
Famous
you.
last words. No, I'm just happy, and I would like to encourage all the research managers out there to keep on going and keep on
Yes.
well, sometimes struggling in their job, but it's an amazing job. It's a fantastic job. It's a job with a huge added value, and we'll do our best to help them.
Research management matters.
There you go. On that note, thank you. Thanks, guys. I'm just going to land the plane here. So, dear listeners, thank you for listening to the end of this third episode in the RM Framework series. Go and check my website out if you like this episode. First of all, there's going to be a link in the episode notes to there's a dedicated site on my platform to the RM Framework series. So there you can go and listen to the first 2 episodes if you haven't already listened to them. When you go to that website, you say, wow, this is a cool website. And that's because I almost have 200 episodes, podcast episodes on new R&D funding, and there's lots within this topic. So if you go to Podcast Universe and scroll down, you'll find lots and lots and lots. Definitely you'll find interesting if this was interesting for you. So do that. And while you're there, say, wow, how does he do this? He must... It's because it's an independent podcast. I do this in my spare time. And if you want to support me, humble independent podcaster, do subscribe to my email list. That's the most simple way you can do that. Finally, connect with me on LinkedIn. Connect with my project page. Connect with the grant site also on LinkedIn. And do you have a LinkedIn site for the project?
We have a website and we have a LinkedIn site as well, I think.
I will link to it here so you can also connect with the project if you're interested. Now, that's that. Thanks for coming around. It's been a very nice conversation. Now, let's say goodbye to the dear listeners. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to the Grant Collaborations, part of the Grant podcast. This podcast episode is a collaboration between the RM Framework project and the Grant. All episodes in this RM Framework series have their own site on the Grant website. You'll find the link to the episode site where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Frank and Henning's LinkedIn sites, and of course a link to the project website. Next episode will be released on the 17th of December, and here focus will be on the handbook for trainers. That is a key part of the project deliverables. We look forward to that. You have been listening to the Grant Collaborations, a part of the Grant podcast.